Ryan Stick Show.
What's this, Mom?
Huh? Oh, I got that for you today at Jane Burge's garage sale. It says it's from that old house up on Shadowbrook Road.
Holy shit. Cal, I meant, sorry. Mom, do you know who wrote this book?
Yeah, it's Van Helsing something. Now, he's the one that fights Godzilla, right?
Dracula, Mom.
Well, then which is the really tall one?
That's Godzilla. Oh, my God. Abraham Van Helsing. This is great. This is German.
I'm 40, so I literally, my brothers, my cousins, we watched this movie nonstop. Like, we grew up just obsessed with this movie. And actually, I wanted to mention that there's another movie, I think you know where I'm going with this, but there's this other movie, The Goonies, that it was often compared, and I just never took to The Goonies. It was always Monster Squad. That's it. And people kept comparing them. I'm like, how can you even compare?
That's true. And when a lot of people said, "Oh, it's just 87's version of the Goonies from the year before because it's a bunch of kids running around, and some supernatural stuff." I think they're two completely different movies. I think they're two completely different things. Yes, do we have some sort of the same characters in the group of kids? Of course, because both movies are indicative of a group of friends in a neighborhood. You're going to have all these different characters that bind together and play at the end of the street. What I love about the group in the Monster Squad, which is sort of also carried through in the characters in the Goonies with Mikey and Chunk, is especially I think the reason that the fans as kids connected with the Monster Squad is they saw Sean and Patrick and Horace and Phoebe and, even Rudy to some extent when you actually dive into that character a little bit deeper. Ryan Lambert has a great kind of, take on the Rudy character, but we're all misfits that would not exist without each other. And the only, they don't have any other friends. And so this is their crew. This is their squad. And they're experts on things that other kids think are lame or geeky. They're experts on monsters, on literature, on movie history, on, monster lore, on comic books, things like that, which in the original screenplay, you learn a lot more about the background and the knowledge base of these kids in the Monster Squad, which we didn't shoot or got cut out or got trimmed. And so we lose a little of that you got to read between the lines in the final cut that we see. But that's what everybody resonated with. Everybody connected with the character because they were the misfits. I loved when I learned the origin story in Fred Decker's mind, why he made this movie, because he grew up as a TV and a film kid, in the 60s and 70s, watching 30s, 40s, and 50s black and white television, black and white movies. And he thought one day when he was in college of a story of what would happen if the Little Rascals fought the classic Universal monsters.
Oh my God.
Oh, cool.
Are you kidding?
So that's where those two groups come together that you've never seen. And so we're basically the Little Rascals, and which were misfits in the neighborhood, and they showed up in their clubhouse and they had their dog, and they had Petunia and they had Alfalfa and they had, Buckwheat, and they had all these awesome characters. So it's basically just sort of a modern retooling of our gang in the Monster Squad. Which I think is a little bit deeper and tighter than a group of, plucky, campy kids that you usually saw in movies of the 70s and 80s or even 90s when there's a group of kids. Because what was happening in those other movies, not Monster Squad, is they were older, adult, usually male writers that were trying to be funny and being kid-like with their humor. It came across as camp. It came across as not authentic. Fred and Shane were in college when they started writing this movie. So they were just a little bit older than we were when we made it.
Okay.
By 2 classes of, school grades, I guess. And that authenticity and the realness and the heart that came through that writing of how kids actually spoke to each other, how they interacted with the rest of the world, how they interacted with their parents and with each other and with teachers at school. That's what made the kids in the Monster Squad and their dialogue and their characters connect with the fans, because they see it as real and they all thought it was authentic. And it's the authenticity and the heart in the characters and the dialogue that really caught everybody. And it's unlike all the other movies during the time, because it went the campy route because adults were writing for kids and they hadn't been kids in 25, 30 years. And they don't know what kids, sound like, in the current day. But Fred and Shane certainly did. And I think that's what really made the impact.
It's speaking of kids and all that kind of stuff. What was the age ranges between you and the cast? Well, like we all know Phoebe and Eugene are younger, but were the rest of you kind of mildly around the same age? Because I hear
How
about
old were you?
I hear about little movies like Little Giants where Devon Sawa was like 5-6 years older than everybody, yet they're in the same team, and
And that happens with kids for a number of reasons. Usually it's age and maturity to play younger because it's easier. Most of the time, if people don't know, it's very, very restrictive to work with kids in film and television. There's a lot of child labor laws. There's strict rules. They can only be there for certain hours of the day for certain length of time. Even those hours of the day are different for different age groups. You have to go to school every day. It's very hard on a production. It's not conducive to efficiency whatsoever. And it's very costly. And there's a lot of rules. And we had a range of ages. Michael and Ashley were like 5 and 6 when they made that movie. Brent Chalem was actually, I think, 11 or 12 when we shot it. So he was really young, played Horace. Robbie
really?
Kiger and I, he was actually a little bit younger than we were. But it looked like he was the same age. So that worked out there. Robbie and I were about the same age because I was 13 when we shot the movie. I was 14 when it came out. And Ryan was about a year and a half, almost 2 years older than I was. So he was definitely the oldest kid in the group, besides Lisa Fuller, who plays Patrick's sister. But, she's just in, 2 quick scenes. But
2 very impactful scenes.
Two very impactful scenes. She could have been the hero of the world, but it didn't work out that way. Which is something that, other movies don't touch on. I mean, this movie goes and it touches on so many things that we have a concentration camp Holocaust reference. We have, a teen sex reference. We have, drinking beer reference, Rudy sitting there drinking beer and smoking cigarettes, and, we're using language and we're shooting firearms and we're, there's a dynamite, our clubhouse gets dynamited by a monster. There's a lot of stuff that you wouldn't necessarily see before, after, or ever again on screen with a bunch of kids in a movie.
One of the most okay, look, here's the thing, everybody. Shocking news. I was a huge dork growing up and presently, but especially growing up. I looked like the Jerry Maguire kid, but less cute. And I was what you would call a bully magnet. Had people been more mean in my school, I would have been pulverized. But thankfully, I went to school with very nice people, so I'm not going to pull that card. But I will say this. I always felt a little nervous, but every time I would connect with a character in a movie where I can't be that cool guy, but I could be that cool guy's friend. When Rudy comes and saves Horace, that is some of the finest heroic schoolyard heroics I think I have ever seen to this day. I think the movie didn't even start yet. You saw Dracula in the beginning and all that, but the gang did not meet them. But I will always remember when that jerk from the Wonder Years is just punching him, and just everyone to just really get into this. He's laying into him. I'm sure some of this might have been edited out or cut down or stuff like that. But when Rudy stops him, he is full on if Rudy didn't stop in at that point, it could have got really bad. And just a calm, cool performance of, hey.
EJ? See, you met my friend Horace. You okay?
Rudy,
Shh. You dropped your candy bar, EJ.
It's his.
It's yours now.
Rudy?
Eat.
Rudy, I'm not gonna sit
Eat
here
up!
and eat.
And we'll call it a day.
You're just like, oh my God. And then he joins the club and all that. So sorry, it's a tangent. I'm speaking of a fan, but that just, what about you, Mel?
No, the movie ages so well too, because when you watch that scene as a kid, you're like, he's such a bully. But now that I'm 40, I'm watching that scene as if I was that kid's mother, how enraged and how I'd be calling the school and blah, 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 blah. And also I connected with your character, Andre, because my dad was a homicide detective. So, and he would go out looking exactly like your dad. And my brothers and I have said, anyone was wrong with us, he kicks their ass. And my dad's he's a great guy. He's not like a bad detective. Like he's a good dude. But my parents had their issues as well. So when they were going through the scenes with the marriage counseling and the problem in the marriage, I was really we really connected. So.
Well, that makes it even better. Like I was saying, where the original viewers or the fans, where they connect with someone, and you connected on multiple levels there. So that's super awesome. And tell your dad thank you for being a detective. I'm a big detective fan of people that do that work, because when their beeper goes off, it's not a good day, and for at least somebody, and they go through some hard stuff. So. It's interesting. We talk about, Ryan's, the character Rudy screeching up, and that was such an iconic moment. There's a half a dozen iconic moments in this movie that just burned into people's minds, and that's one of them. And he lights the thing on, he lights his, he's smoking on school grounds. He's so damn cool, right? Mm-hmm. But that was in the script. I mean, he's a modern day James Dean impact.
Yeah.
And, because he went back to the, kind of street kid greaser type role, and Ryan knocked it out of the park. And I'll tease back a little bit to your original audition question. A lot of Monster Squad fans do know this because we've talked about it a lot, but some don't. When I originally auditioned for the Monster Squad, I auditioned for the role of Rudy.
What the?
And I screen tested, went back, called back, screen tested all the way through. And I never auditioned one line for Sean. It was always Rudy, because if you go back, my body of work leading up to auditioning for Monster Squad, I always played the cool kid with the cool clothes and the great hair, and that was Rudy. I auditioned. I remember the audition like it was yesterday. I know what scene it was, and I thought I did a good job. I got the call, weeks later. That I got cast in that movie I read for last month called The Monster Squad, and I was all excited. And they said, but you didn't get the role that you auditioned for. And usually that's bad news, because usually they want you, but they give you a different role or a lesser role. And I was like, oh, man.
You're playing no,
you got
Phoebe.
The lead. They cast you as the lead. Oh. And I was so crestfallen and disappointed at the time, because Rudy was the cool character. He gets to smoke, he gets to cuss, he gets to steal the bow and arrow, he kills more monsters. But I got so we show up on set, and I didn't know Ryan Lambert until about 2 or 3 weeks before we started shooting. We had never crossed paths, because he had just joined the cast of Kids Incorporated just before that. And we met, and there's a great photo of like one of the first nights we hung out. I was like, wow, this guy is going to be awesome, because he looks like this cool greaser from the 50s. He's got more style and attitude just naturally than I would have to, kind of bump up the try to pretend a little bit more. Yeah. And so I showed up on set. They gave me a bad haircut, put me in some dorky clothes, and I just became the dorky leader. The insufferable know-it-all, which is apparently continues to this day, if you ask my friends.
Did you hear a word I said? The guys are dead. Get a clue? Something's out there and it's killing people. And if it's monsters, nobody's going to do a thing about it but us.
Ryan, I always lament that I didn't get to play Rudy, but I wouldn't have done the same Rudy that Ryan did, and it wouldn't have been as good.
Maybe a few
I think
years older.
I think everybody's in the right spot.
You're definitely I can't even begin to picture anybody else as the lead except you, but I do see the sense in having you audition for Rudy, though. Now that you mentioned it, I'm like, well, that actually makes perfect sense. But for me, it's like maybe if you were a couple years older, then
right.
That would, because I can't unsee the age difference now.
Right, and I think that played a part in it. Appearance, age, height. The performance where whose face saying certain words would work better, and they absolutely made the right call. I always say that, and I don't think, look, like I said, everybody auditioned for the Monster Squad. All the names of the same day. Most of the Goonies auditioned for the Monster Squad. And there's, big names that are still big names today and were huge names, all read for these roles. And I don't think, and I may be biased here, but I don't think if you supplanted anybody in there that you would have changed it for the better. No. Except for one thing, and not to take anything away from Robbie, I've been lifelong friends from that time with one of my favorite people, not only in the world, but especially in entertainment, is Seth Green.
Oh, no way.
And I know Seth because Seth grew up in Philadelphia and worked a lot as a kid out of New York, but it came down to Seth Green and Robbie Kiger for the role of Patrick.
Are you kidding? Oh my God.
Yeah, so Seth and his mom had to fly out to LA and spend a couple days, and I had to go like spend an entire day with him, and like we went to the mall and went to see a movie and had lunch and dinner, and we got to hang out, and he was this short, energetic, really funny kid with a shock of red hair because he used to have long red hair at the time, and it was just kind of like wow. And I never met this kid, and I had known Robbie almost my entire life, and Seth's in the documentary is one of our great interviews because he tells about the impact of how Monster Squad not only affected him but also changed his life, because shortly after that they decided to move to LA instead of just going back and forth, and he became Seth Green, who one is I think one of the most creative people and funniest people out there, but he's built an empire with his company and his shows, and there's a handful of people when people ask me who your favorite people in entertainment are, and he's always in the top of that list. Because not everybody's super genuine, not super nice, but Seth is a very genuine human being that I've known for a long time, and he's always there if you need something, even if you don't talk to each other for 6 or 7 months or 6 years, which is evident in another project that he helped me out with when I had moved back to LA about 6 years ago. So he was almost in Monster Squad.
Wow,
that's insane! What a scoop!
But I think everybody's great. Ryan, I don't know if Ryan, if someone would have replaced. I can't think of anybody at that time. There's a bunch of cool kids with cool hair and like we all had great hair product and cool clothes. But Ryan brought something to Rudy that he explained years later. Everybody else had just been the cool kid, and Ryan realized. Even before I think even Fred and Shane realized, Ryan Lambert being 14, 15 at the time, that Rudy was not the badass. All of the leather jacket, the glasses, the cigarette, and the hair, and the smoke, that was all it was all a facade. And he was just as a introvert misfit that didn't fit in with anybody as the rest of the kids. And that's why this kid ends up hanging out with the rest of the group. And Ryan, comes up with this amazing character study of Rudy, which you read between, you're like, that is amazing. And I think you're absolutely right.
And good
There's
for him.
There's a whole other origin story of Rudy.
Oh my God, I thought he just stayed for the boobies. Jeez.
Way.
Hey, we're trying to do the test deal. You're gonna piss him off.
I'm beginning to like this club.
Rudy! Come on, it's a monster test. It's important, okay?
No, but it wasn't a one-dimensional character. It would have been so easy to make that kind of a character one-dimensional. He didn't do that.
Correct. And I think everybody would have done that as a performance. And Ryan didn't. And mostly because he thought about this character as he was doing it and came up with these amazing, ahead of the box thinking and going deep, like you said, made it multi-layered and deeper. And that really changes it. Because if Ryan mentions cool things like, look at that character. Rudy's the only character that doesn't cuss in the movie. He never calls Horace fat kid.
Yeah.
Even because only his friends can call him fat kid, and he's fine with that. Horace can't rebel because he's the chubby kid who gets beat on that everybody calls fat kid. But we're okay because we're his best friends. We're his family. But Rudy never cusses. He never calls Horace fat kid, and he's the defender of everybody out there because he can be. So he brought that role in because I don't think Rudy, and his last name is Halloran for anybody super deep cut fans out there, realize that. And Ryan thinks like Rudy has like this kind of bad relationship with his dad, a la Bender, maybe we'll bring that full circle here, but because Bender is the badass, but he's really not. He's sensitive and he's can be introspective, and he just wants to fit in with something. And Bender and their breakfast club goes to detention so he can have a crew of people to experience life with. He has nobody else, and he has a terrible home life. And I love the fact that we can dive into something like Rudy Halloran and come up with that. And Ryan brought that out.
You were mentioning something. We have more fan questions, but I definitely since it's on topic, you were mentioning about the secret origins of the Monster Squad that was in the script but never got shot. Can you just shine a light on some of those little tidbits because it made my geek brain explode a little bit.
Yeah, well, some of it was actually originally, and we talk about it a little bit in the doc, which is funny, the origin stories that we weren't even, seeds in the apple of Fred and Shane's mind when they started conceiving the story, 2 years before we actually shot it or so. But these kids, on Shane's original script was like 1 million pages long, and the budget was like 10 times, what it was supposed to be. And one of my favorite things is like prior, when we start off the 100 years ago in history of Van Helsing and his merry band of men, there's supposed to be like Zeppelins and like 50 sailing ships, and a horde of invading army and, this big clash in the forest, and they have to fight their way to get to the castle, which was amazing. But they had to cut all that down to just guys running through the woods for a second.
Wow.
But the kids, there was other scenes, there was dialogue between each other, there was examples. If you look at their treehouse is basically a library of history and folklore and monster lore, literature, old movies. We read books. We're the expert resident nerds of all of this stuff that people think's dumb. And when that shit actually comes to town, we're the only ones that understand what it is and how to fight it. And there was a much deeper backstory with that. There was much deeper stuff in the second act, which all comes to fruition in, that awesome third act with the final battle scene, which was long and awesome, but was even shorter than I think it should have been because it's so amazing. But one of my favorite things in the script was what you see on screen, and I always talk about this, is Monster Squad is an entire movie of setups that you don't necessarily get all the payoffs. And there's a bunch of payoffs that you don't realize are payoffs because we never got the setup.
That's so interesting.
And that's how good writers write. Not only in the entire storyline, there's a setup and a payoff at the end, but inside each chapter, or each act, or each scene, how Fred Decker and Shane Black write is there's setups and payoffs even in those little segments. And sometimes they cross over from segment 3 to segment 9, but it's disjointed. We had 20-something pages cut as we were shooting. The original script got pared down because of time and budget. And someone who read the original drafts, there were so many longer, awesome, in-depth scenes that we didn't get to do. And one of them was in the mansion where we find the amulet down in the catacombs. That was supposed to be, just prior to that, we meet Scary German Guy. Which is genius because his character name is Scary German Guy. And we always get focused on his concentration camp tattoo, but it's the lines just before that when he said, I suppose you thought I was some sort of monster myself, like a vampire, but if I was, I wouldn't have a reflection. Now, would I?
If I were a vampire, then I wouldn't have a reflection. Now, would I?
But in the very next couple scenes, we're in the mansion trying to track down this amulet. And in the original screenplay, we go to that house and there's a guy there. And we don't know who this guy is. And he's like, I don't remember it verbatim, but I always joke that I can't remember if he's like a real estate agent or he says he's like Van Helsing's great grandson or something. I don't recall. But he's like, can you help me? Because I'm looking for something and I think you're looking for the same thing. Let's go this way. And he leads us down into the bowels of this house or down the hallway. And it's this old broken down kind of mansion-y swamp house. And as we're getting deeper and deeper in this house, it's me and Horace and Eugene. And we're walking through this house and Sean's character, which was mine, looks at this big kind of dusty broken mirror. And we're all there except for that guy.
Oh,
and then we realize, and I think there's supposed to be like a floating latex, like he just put on a mask or something.
Oh.
And then we realize, because of our knowledge of monsters and vampires, and it just got referenced for the audience, the scene before with Scary German Guy, that vampires don't have reflections.
See, that's the kind of stuff
and also even like vampires have to be invited in your house to come in. They can't just come in.
Okay.
And that's what, but because of script size, timing, budget, all that scene got, because then we realize, holy shit, we're in trouble. We've got to run. So then it becomes a Scooby-Doo episode where we're running through this house, going through trap doors, going room to room. And on each level, as we kind of, level down or Donkey Kong up or whatever, going to different rooms and levels, we run into a different monster.
Yeah.
And then it culminates with kicking Wolfman in the nards. But it all ended up getting smushed down into one level of this house and going through that pretty much on the day. The cool story is that actor that was supposed to play that guy wearing the mask was actually on set all day. They rewrote the scene, I guess, as we went and cut him out. He was actually a young actor from Scotland, I believe, that had auditioned for Dracula originally, and he was awesome. But Duncan Regeer was just better. But they liked this other guy who had done a couple low-budget fantasy movies leading up to Monster Squad. And they said, well, let's make him this other guy in the house and give him the scene. And apparently, I don't remember, he was on set all day. They just never shot this guy in that house. And he went on to become Liam Neeson.
Dear God.
I love how you set up that story, because I heard the Liam Neeson thing in the past, and then I had my doubts. I'm like, oh, it's probably Liam Neeson, but maybe you would have mentioned that by now. But it's just like, oh, and then you drop that mic. Good for you, man.
Oh my God, to even think of it.
And that's just something cool, with backstories, things like that, and why people get cast for certain things.
What were some other people?
Why auditions are important.
What were some other people that auditioned for some of the roles?
I don't know specifics, but I do know, Stephen Mocht, who played my dad in the movie, he's a great actor. And, he's that quintessential kind of hardcore, New York study, real actor guy. And he's amazing in whatever he does. And if you watch some of his old stuff from the 70s, even though maybe he's in one, I forgot what it's called, but he's in this campy sci-fi movie that is on par with Zardoz. And it's amazing, and I love it.
Nice.
And it's right up there with like Zardoz and Megaforce and Ice Pirates and things like that. And I love it. And he's great in it. And one of the other things, like coming out of Night of the Creeps and things like that, I was like, what if Tom Atkins was my dad in the Monster Squad? That would have been amazing, because Fred had just directed him in Night of the Creeps, and it almost looks better, but. Peter Hyams, who was the producer of this movie and a big director and producer at the time, his wife loved Stephen Mocht from being on General Hospital. And so they brought him in, and he got the role because it had, a little connection there. It's great little tidbits like that you learn over time, that kind of flavor the experience, as you go along. But the two of my favorite characters in the Monster Squad are the old cargo plane pilots that are just kind of like they're so good, and they're just two New York original actor guys that if you watch other things, you see these guys in episodes of TV shows and other movies. You're like, holy shit, there he is.
Yeah. And
that's where great character actors come into play, because everybody's so focused on the main characters or the guys in the monster suits. And obviously someone like Tom Noonan, who plays Frankenstein's monster, everybody knows the story that Duncan Regeer, who's amazing, and Tom Noonan, who is probably one of the scariest actor of in everything he does. He's so good and creepy, and just a presence. But we as the kids never saw those two guys out of character or out of costume for 3 months. We never saw those human beings. We just saw the monsters. And Tom Noonan is super method. And he even went home in his makeup one day because they shot until like the break of dawn. He was like, I'm not spending 2 hours getting out of this shit. I'm just driving home. So he went home in full Frankenstein makeup and came back, which I would love that cop dash cam footage if they had pulled him over.
Oh my God.
Of how crazy that would have been.
Seriously.
But I didn't know what Tom Noonan looked like. And we shot a movie with him for like a month. And I went home and went to my VHS rental store and had to rent Manhunter to see what this guy looked like. And I always joke, I was like, I wish I didn't, because he scared the shit out of me in Manhunter, and then I got to show up tomorrow and do a scene because that's a creepy portrayal as Francis Dollarhide in Manhunter, and that movie's amazing. And he was awesome in that. And he's awesome in everything. He's an awesome actor. And someone like Stan Shaw, who plays the buddy cop to the Dell character. Is Stan Shaw. He's a fantastic actor.
His death made us super sad, man. He was just in the car and he's trying to get out and he gets blown up. It's like, when does Dracula start packing heat and dynamite and stuff like that?
Well, and he just thought he blew up a bunch of kids in a treehouse 2 seconds before that.
Yeah.
So this guy ain't messing around. Like Dracula that's one of my favorite shots in Monster Squad is when things are starting to unravel for him. That's not a mummy pun, but
I love puns.
He drives through my picket fence at my house and he rips the door of his car off with one hand, the back door that's my favorite shot in the movie because he's so pissed. He's so determined. He's like, I'm done with this crap. I'm going to go dynamite 5 kids so I can get on with my job. But if you realize and read the storyline in between the storylines, he's pissed. And everybody asks, where did Dracula get dynamite? It goes back to one of the setups that we never got the payoff or the exposition, because in the beginning of the movie, when we're at at Dracula's castle and Van Helsing's merry band of men, they capture Dracula. They capture Duncan, and they stake him to a tree in the forest.
Oh,
that scene was shot. It's an extra on one of the DVDs. They stake Dracula. They throw him in a wagon. And they go up into the castle to do limbo and suck all the evil out of the world to read the virgin incantation. Well, as merry band of army men do, they leave the body of the evil one lying in a wagon with one, I call him a red shirt guy, to guard the camp and the campfire. What happens is he's sitting there and 3 vampire brides come out of the woods and attack him. He shoots one with his crossbow. He stakes the other one. The other one's choking him. He's almost going down for the count. His flailing arms reach up and he grabs a stake and kills her. But of course, in monster lore and vampire mythology, if you unstake a vampire, he comes back to life. Oh. And he had reached back, pulled the stake out of Dracula that they had just killed while they're up doing the spell. Dracula escapes.
Oh my God.
So Dracula has been walking around for 100 years waiting for this day, and we're foiling his plans. And that's my favorite part of reading into the deeper story, that he has been walking around on the world. So he made, like I always make a joke, it's like, he just got some, a bag of dynamite from when he was hanging out while they were building the Hoover Dam or the Panama Canal or something. And, he's just kept it handy in case he needs it, because he has nothing to do except wait 100 years for this day when Limbo is balanced and he can destroy the amulet. And we foil his plans. And that's some of the... And if you realize the camp scene with the red shirt that kills the vampire brides that unstakes Dracula, it's the same scene at the end of the movie where Rudy kills the 3 vampire brides. It's the setup and a payoff that we don't get.
Oh my God.
Okay, another of my favorite scenes is just like, Rudy, what are you doing? I'm in the goddamn club, aren't I?
Mm-hmm. Where you going, Rudy?
I'm in the goddamn club, aren't I?
And you're just like,
Classic line.
get him, Rudy. But where are they? Maybe the monsters.
Maybe the monsters got them. I had a question about when Dracula picks up Phoebe by the face. Yeah. How was that shot? Because he's screaming the curse word in a child's face. How did that go?
You'll love the documentary because we cover that in detail.
Oh, okay.
There's a great story that Ashley tells, and she tells it better. I'm not plugging my movie, but she tells it better. It's her story to tell. But Fred tricked her a little bit. Ashley was deathly afraid of Duncan in character because she was terrified because she thought he was a real monster. And on this day, they brought her on set and said, all right. And Ashley was a consummate professional. She knew her lines. She knew her marks. She knew what to do. And Fred said, okay, we're going to do the line. You got Duncan, and and at one point you're going to scream. And she said, okay, when? And he goes, you'll know. And he's not telling her.
Oh my
God. And so they had her on this lift, and, they put her on this little kind of, dolly lift, and he lifts her up and says, give me the amulet, you bitch, to a 5-year-old. And again, Dracula's not messing around. He's been walking around for 100 years, and we're in his way. And she gets scared, and Ashley was deathly afraid of Duncan's red contact lenses and his fangs.
Oh my God.
And so most of the scenes that he had with it, he had to do it without that. And then she was offset when he put the fangs and contacts in. Oh. But for this one shot, for this reaction for Ashley, they were in and she didn't know it.
Oh no.
Give me the amulet, you bitch.
And he hissed at her with his eyes and the teeth, and he's holding her, and the wind's blowing. This 5-year-old girl in the middle of the night on the back lot of Warner Brothers. And there's a little tidbit, and we explained in the doc a little bit, but she was so scared that she screamed and nothing came out.
Oh, no way.
Oh, wow.
And so they had to do it again.
So she had to do it twice.
She had to do it twice, and so that's why there's a little jump cut and a longer screen with Ashley in that scene, which actually worked out good cinematically, but terrifyingly for young Ashley Bank. But as Shane jokes and in the doc, he goes, we thought scaring kids to death at the time was a good idea. I don't think we did any permanent damage, but that's certainly an awesome story that Ashley gets to tell that she still remembers quite vividly.
You mentioned that, Dracula was supposed to be staked and stuff like that, but the only person that ever gets that stake in there in that movie is you, and you do it while, Dracula's being pulled into limbo, and it's super cool, and brother Nick is asking something pretty cool. He says, back to Adidas, does Andre still own that white jacket that he wears at the end when he stabs Dracula? Do you still have that jacket?
Not only do I have the jacket, I have my entire wardrobe, including the original Stephen King Rules shirt, which is the authentic, original, screen-worn, not the reproduction that a lot of people have or when they make their own. And that, when you watch the documentary, you will see an unveiling of that Stephen King Rules shirt that no one has seen in 30-something years. But I have also brought that to 2 different parties and screenings where we actually recreated the clubhouse. And we put the poster art up, and I brought a bunch of props and everything from the movie. And I put my clothing on a mannequin, so everybody got to take pictures with not only the white Adidas jacket, but the Stan Smith Adidas, the faded Levi's, and the original Stephen King Rules shirt. So yes, I actually do own all of that.
Wow, man!
It is currently in the possession of a good friend, couple of mine, Grace Chan and Sierra Nielli, because she's the one that wrote the I Heart Rudy zine, and she's currently writing an I Heart Sean zine, and I gave her all of my Monster Squad props and production stuff, including the wardrobe, so she could play with it and take photos with. So she currently has that right now.
I'd just like to say, brother Nick out there, that you seem to have like a golden nose when it comes to asking stuff that gets great answers and stuff like that. I'm learning so much about this. Like I don't have nice things. I've been wearing this jacket every day for like 3 months, but it's funny how Adidas and a love affair with Adidas for a lifetime can really last, because I can remember my first Nike hat, and I hold it near and dear to my heart. Because the Rudy of my elementary school said, you know what you should do? You should stop wearing sweatsuits, and you should probably start wearing Nike hats if you want girls to notice you, because what you're doing right now is just not going to work. And I'll always remember that, Andy. I don't know if you're going to watch this, Andy, but I remember that very well.
Probably good advice, Andy.
We have a question from Yannick, Horror Master Yannick. He's in a band called the Screaming Demons, a horror punk band. And him and I are writing some songs together, one including, which is called Wolfman's Got Nards. So when that's done, maybe I'll send it your way and be like, hey,
absolutely.
I know how to write the songs. Okay, so he says he just got the 1980s complete Twilight Zone today. And Andre is in an episode. What was it like to be in the Twilight Zone?
Growing up as a kid, watching the original, 60s Rod Serling Twilight Zones, and this was the first revamping of that. I thought it was super cool. What was even cooler was that happened to be an episode called The Burning Man, which was actually a Ray Bradbury short story that they just wrote a teleplay for, which was kind of creepy. It was supposed to take place in the 30s, I believe, in the Midwest. And it's me and 2 other actors. And what I didn't realize, because I think I was 10 or so when I did that, 10 or 11, I had this amazing lady that was playing my aunt that we're on this road trip with. And then we come across this old guy in the middle of the prairie. And I recognized him because I'd seen him and stuff. I didn't really recognize the lady the first day I was shooting, this week of the show, but I realized over time that these were 2 very famous actors, and the old man in the episode was Robert Blossom, who's an award-winning actor that's in gigantic movies and an amazing character actor. He's even in one of my all-time favorite movies, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He's the guy that goes, "I saw Bigfoot once." But the lady playing my aunt was none other than Piper Laurie, who
Wow.
I had no idea who Piper Laurie was at the time because I was 10. I had not seen The Hustler. I didn't know she was an Oscar winner. I didn't know, super, super well-known, amazing performer. And she was super awesome. And it was so hot shooting that because we were out in the hills in north of LA, and it was about 900 degrees. And what's ironic, there's a Monster Squad tie-in there. The guy that wrote that episode and directed it was a guy named J.D. Fiegelson, who was a television writer who ended up, this was the first thing he ever directed. And I'm still friends with J.D. He lives in Louisville. And he wrote a movie that was a big cult thing in the genre called Night of the Scarecrow. And he wrote and directed
cool.
that people like. But the DP on that episode was a guy named Bradford May, who was a very good cinematographer and turned into a great DP and director, but he was also the DP on the Monster Squad. So I got to work with Brad more than once, which was awesome. But that story was a Ray Bradbury scary thing about, timely right now, because we're getting ready to have our Brood 9 locust hatchings in the South next month, the 13-year locust. And this was a story about if there can be 75-year locusts, why can't there be 75-year people that bury in the mud and come out and eat for one day? And, if you watch the episode, we get that story, and Robert Blossom's shell splits open and Danny Cooksey comes out off screen and he eats us.
Amazing, man. That's such a fun thing. Like you were mentioning in the beginning of the episode, and I'm not sure if it's in the extended director Snyder cut of this episode that's only on Stranger Radio, but you did mention you're like, instead of being locked down on one show, you just kind of happen to be on all these shows that would last a season, or you do an episode. But as a result, you have all this life experience. Like you can't put your career in a little box where it's like, oh, I did this and this. It's just like, no, your IMDb is strong and long, and just moments like that where you can touch on these little parts of an entire universe of genre, whether if it's TV, whether if it's movies, and that is amazing. And that's something I would like to do too. I never want to be the star of anything, but I do want to die in like 5 things. That would be awesome.
Well, that's good. I've only died in 2 things. One was a short, and I was for a second I played an alien, and then I died in a Nerdist promo sketch that Andrew Bowser did for when The Predator was coming out.
Everybody stop having fun right now!
Who are you?
We're the Monster Squad.
Well, we're army guys.
We're army guys. What we are is an elite squad of crazy motherfuckers, hot on the trail of some stolen alien technology that we tracked right f***ing here.
Oh, you mean this thing? Well, guess what, fellas? I won this fair and square in our holiday gift exchange.
I got killed by the Predator, so that was kind of cool.
You looked. Oh, I should have ditched the quip. Oh. Yeah.
But I haven't done anything else. But yeah, it's, you mentioned sort of that resume and that career kind of arc. I don't think I would trade mine, even for the things I know that I was supposed to do or didn't do that would have been made your world completely different. Most of it always leads up to probably not sitting here and talking to you and Melissa and all your listeners and our fans. There's a lot of movies I would have loved to have been in that I didn't get, that you get close to, things like Dead Poet Society and The Mosquito Coast and things like that, which are things that I remember getting very close to.
Oh, man.
But, there was another backstory of, I was doing a show called TJ Hooker, where I was TJ Hooker's son, and they ended up bringing his kids onto the show. And it was me and Jenny Beck, who was the actor that played the sister. And we had a couple episodes. And then at the end of that season, they canceled TJ Hooker. But then another network picked it up, but they weren't bringing the kids back. So they wanted to not bring that storyline back. But I was still under contract calendar-wise to a certain date with that network. And I was unable to do another show that I had gotten which was Growing Pains. And
what?
So this is where working and contracts fall in. But Jeremy Miller was on Growing Pains, and that was a great show for them. And now that's his legacy in his life. I wouldn't want to take that away from anybody. I've got my own that came in and out of that. But we all have those stories.
So you were cast in Growing Pains, and then you had to back out.
Yeah, it was some weird contract thing that I was still stuck with TJ Hooker, even though I wasn't able to. They weren't doing this shit. It's contract stuff. It's weird stuff. And then there's for during that time, I was under a unique situation where I was sort of in a development deal with 20th Century Fox, the studio, because I was doing a bunch of television shows for Michael Zenberg, who was a big TV producer and director, who still is. He's still directing huge tentpole network shows. And Randy Zisk, who was young at the time, and I did 2 or 3 television shows for them that didn't go more than one season. And they were developing shows for me, and this is right when Fox became a new network. I had just done Monster Squad. It came out. Fox became a new network in 88, and they had like 6 or 7 original shows. And I got offered, through that inside deal, I got offered 2 of those shows. And at the time, it was one of the shows was produced by Johnny Carson. Ed Weinberger was making the show, and Ed Weinberger was one of the biggest TV names in the world. It was starring George C. Scott and Conrad Bain.
Oh my God.
George C. Scott was doing television for the first time. They ended up bringing Madeline Kahn onto the show, and it was called Mr. President. So it was a show about George C. Scott gets elected as the president of the United States, and we're his family. That show was guaranteed to go 2 seasons. They were paying a lot of money per, over scale for, my contract. And it was starring all these amazing people. And it was guaranteed to go 2 seasons. So the other show, the pilot wasn't even guaranteed to air. It had nobody associated with it that anybody knew. And the script was a little fuzzy and a little blue and a little raunchy. And so we chose, correctly at the time, Mr. President over Married with Children. But being friends with David my entire life, David goes on and becomes Bud Bundy, and it's this, a worldwide iconic character in a show, and he rocked out Bud Bundy. No one would have done it like David did, and that's why shows like that are successful. But what's interesting is Christina obviously was Kelly Bundy, and I was on a previous show with Michael Zenberg and Randy Zisk through Fox called Heart of the City, and Christina and Jonathan Ward played the kids of the detective. Here you go, Melissa. Of the detective
nice.
Of the show, and I was the criminal who he arrests because I'm a 12-year-old crack dealer in the pilot, and I shoot a kid.
Dear Lord.
And he gets involved with my world. It's very 80s. I was a crack dealer. There was a drive-by. It's crazy. And he gets involved with my mom, who was the amazing actor, Kay Lenz. And so I have this recurring arc on that show. The 3 kids on that detective show that only went 1 season ended up with their own shows on Fox Network 2 years later. Christina did Married with Children. I did Mr. President. And Jonathan Ward did a show called The Adventures of Beans Baxter, which was sort of like another kind of sciencey, wizardy, techie kid who, solves crimes and issues, being a genius. And so that was sort of that connection with all of that crew from back in the day. And it's all sort of wrapped up into one ball. And, you just kind of keep swimming in that same orbit of a lot of stuff, which is fun.
Wow.
I had a quick question. This is back up to Monster Squad, though.
Yeah.
So the town square, I've seen that before in Elvira. I know it's like prominently, it's in a lot of, what was it like working in that space? Like, what's behind the church? Is it just like an empty room? Is it just a wall and nothing? Like, what's it like there?
So that is called Main Street on Warner Brothers. And if you go around the corner, you're like in New York or Chicago downtown. If you go on the other thing, you're like in a European town. That's the town square, set on Main Street, which you've seen in things like, little movies like The Music Man with Robert Preston, and that's Dukes of Hazzard Square.
Wow.
That's, if you look over actually where Wolfman blows up in the air, that alley, that's the side entrance to the Alibi on the show Shameless right now.
Oh, wow.
That church has been in it. Yeah, that church has been in a million things.
Is that the Back to the Future square as well?
It's not. That's at Universal.
Oh, okay.
But I believe that's right. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But also when one of the best shots in Monster Squad when Dracula comes and he starts walking in a line and he's just punching cops out left and right. If you look behind him, is the Growing Pains exterior house.
Oh my god!
So down that street of there is just a street of suburban houses, and it happens to be that blue and gray Growing Pains house. So it's a lot of stuff like that mixes on when you shoot on lots. But there's been so many historic movies shot at Warner Brothers on that town square. That's also the Gilmore Girls town square. So there's a bazillion things that have shot there that you'll be like, oh, whoa, wait a minute. And that's how movie magic, because you can be in one corner of town square with a camera angle like this and you don't see the other stuff and you're only getting some period piece. And that's how they make movies magic.
That's amazing. I saw that in Hocus Pocus. The Friends fountain is in Hocus Pocus. The National Lampoon house is in Hocus Pocus when they're dancing in the, anyways. Oh, it's crazy.
Right. That's all on the Warner Brothers ranch, which is about a mile down the road. It's a ranch, but it's down the road. If on Main Street at Warner Brothers, if you go behind, which is like Boss Hogg's office opposite the circus, like that big brick courthouse building, on the facade behind that building is I forgot the name of the cafe, but it's where Rick and Elsa break up in Paris in Casablanca, where she says meet him at the train station. And then across the street from that is the cafe that Emma Stone works in, that Ryan Gosling comes in La La Land.
Wow, my mind is like,
it's all these, yeah. And if you ever get to LA and you take the Warner Brothers studio tour, it's probably one of the better studio tours. Okay. You get to see all that stuff.
I've been to Universal. I've never been to Warner Brothers. No.
Universal is different because you do the big tram thing and you get kind of it's sort of like I call it the motor coach version of it. But Warner Brothers does it in like 10-person golf carts, and you have your own tour guide. And you get a little more access, and you get out, and you get to walk around and take photos. It's pretty bitchin'.
So you've been on one of the tours before, and we're like,
I have been on the lot when the tours come by, and they go, hey, and there's Andre Gower from Monster Squad, which is shot right here, and people get out and freak out. It's fun. But that's a really well-run tour, and I love all the tour guides. I know some of the tour guides. I know some of the managers that run it. They're awesome people, and they're film fans, and they just do an awesome job. So if you go there, take that Warner Brothers tour next time you go.
Yeah.
And tell them I sent you.
Oh,
they won't know who I am. They won't know who I am. You don't get a discount or anything. I'm not that cool.
I have this mirror that I keep whenever I sit in with Ryan, because it's COVID, so he doesn't have guests. Usually he has guests, but now I sit in with him, and it's all green. And every time I pick it up to check my makeup, I'm like, we found the amulet, but now there's monsters after us, because it's all like green and shiny.
Perfect.
All we need is a virgin. All right. So speaking of virgin, not at all, actually. I don't know why I said that, but my best buddy Jay of God, I guess it's been going on like 27 years. That's pretty crazy. He is a full-grown man now, adult, homeowner.
Like you do.
Homeowner. He's got two beautiful kids, Parker and Grayson. And he asked a really cool question. He's like, since you're a kid and stuff like that, and you do some stunts in this movie, or stunts happen in this movie, and there's action, did you do any of your own stunts?
Awesome question, because that certainly hits to me personally, because I love stunts. I know stunt people. Going back to when I talked about the story with Circus of the Stars, usually you train for Cirque of the Stars at this guy's house. His name is Bob Yerkes, and he's a famous Hollywood stuntman. He's a famous circus performer, and he's been in almost every movie that there's stunts in. He's also in the Monster Squad, and I've known him almost my entire life. He's a high fall guy, so he's been known, he jumps off buildings and stuff. He stops now because I think he's like 80, and he should stop jumping off buildings. But I've always loved stuntmen. I've always loved the cowboy fight scenes. I've always loved stunts. I always wanted to be a stuntman. I got to do some stuff because I was athletic in Monster Squad. A lot of stuff you can't do because of liability issues. I did a couple roles. The stuff sliding on Duncan, that's me. There's a scene that's cut that I was up in a flying harness rig. So I'm actually flying in the air after I stake Dracula, and Dracula goes into the vortex. I'm getting sucked into the vortex, but all of my squad members are making a human chain
Yeah, we were talking about
and holding on to me. So, and then at the very end, Robbie's holding on to me, and I'm flying in. So I'm off the ground by like 3 or 4 feet. And so that was a big stunt rig. It just got cut out of the movie. I don't know why it didn't look good, or they didn't want it. But we show it in the documentary with some BTS stuff. And so that was fun doing that stunt. But going forward to there, as I grew up, I've always loved stunts, and I had access to go to Bob Yerke's house because he lives in the Valley, and it's basically I got a circuit set up and stuntman. And I used to go on Thursday mornings and Saturday mornings to stuntman workshop classes for years, and you get to hang out with all these famous stuntmen and work on stunt fights and falls and jumping into airbags and falling off buildings and bird dogging and air ramps and things like that. And then you get to go jump on the trampoline and the trapeze and the high wire. So
nice.
When you have access to that, you get to do some cool stuff. I've always loved stuntmen. I've always loved stunts. And actually, Turner Classic Movies came to do like a special on stuntmen, and it happened to be a day that we were there working out. So I'm in one of those specials for TCM that they, dedicated the month to stuntmen, and they brought all these classic stuntmen from the 40s and 50s, and these are the guys that invented the saloon western brawl, and the guys that invented the horse work, and how to fall off a horse, and do it. So you meet all these legends doing something like that, and most of the guys that come in are stunt crews. There's a lot more now because action is big in movies, but back in the day, it was kind of the same group of famous guys that went around and just did everything. That's why you recognize a lot of bad guys or heavies or villains or criminals, because they're all just stunt guys being actors, and they get killed or shot or thrown off a roof, like John Moyo and Larry Holt and things like that. And that goes all the way back to something like the Towering Inferno, where I mentioned before my sister's in it. Ernie Orsatti and his family and all that are these famous stuntmen, and that do famous things like walk around on fire and fall off buildings and flip cars. I mean, you don't understand what it goes into to doing those stunts. It is unbelievable. And if you meet some of those legends, it's just that's an experience that I always, when I meet a famous stuntman, it's just awesome. And I know some of the world's most famous stuntmen, so I get to call them my friends.
Amazing, man, especially the world's most famous. Just a little shout out to everyone who loves stuntman and the work that they do. For those of you who love Captain America: The Winter Soldier and that really cool scene in the elevator. That is the same stuntman, that Daredevil, Marvel's Daredevil. His name's Chris Brewster, and he's been a guest on this show. So I'm mentioning that now because you love stuntman, and it's crazy how the same brave pair of legs and fists have provided some of the greatest action scenes, and it's really fun to see who's been in what. We need to finish the Facebook portion of the show because our camera, I have been told by the iPad, it's about to die. But we are going to finish up on StrangerRadio.com. So if anybody out there wants to hear the just us wrapping this up, make sure you go to StrangerRadio.com, push listen live, and make sure you check out all the other cool shows there. So for the video portion of the show, we will see you next time. But for the Stranger Radio portion of this show, the night is not over. But do you have something to say to your fans for the video portion of the show?
Hey, thanks for joining us. This is awesome. Support Ryan and Melissa. This is a fun show. Please feel free to follow me on Twitter or Instagram. It's Andre Gower Official on Instagram and at Andre Gower on Twitter. Please also follow at the Squad Doc at both, because hopefully within the next week or 2 or 3, there's going to be some awesome announcements there, and I want you in that fold so you can get the announcements ahead of time or early. And check back with Ryan and Melissa, and we'll give you some updates. And please feel free to hit me up or follow me. And our fans are the best, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Amazing. All right, everyone. See you guys next week. We booked this guest like 4 hours ago, so I have no idea who the heck's going to be on next week, because in the spirit of all things, we do things kind of spontaneously, and it keeps life interesting. So for the video portion of the show, see you next time. And for those of you who want to keep going, StrangerRadio.com, listen live. See you later. Oh, darn it. What an ending of the thing. It's just a bad close-up of my jacket.
The Ryan Stick Show.